Hello, welcome back to this channel. My name is JC. Today I'm going to talk about another law of marketing, the law of leadership. So Eric Sink, who is a pretty famous software engineer, and he has his own company, he wrote this blog post about the law of leadership. And this is from the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. So let's take a look at it together, and then I'll share some thoughts afterwards. Law number one, the law of leadership. The law of leadership affirms the importance of being number one in a category. People usually know who the number one player is, but often cannot even name the number two. Tylenol is obviously the number one brand of acetaminophen. Who is number two? Reese and Trout also claim that the first player to appear in a category usually ends up being the number one player. There are plenty of good examples of this. Chrysler brought us the first minivan and still leads the category. However, I think the authors overstate the importance of being first, especially in our field. There are just too many exceptions. Microsoft Excel was not the first spreadsheet, but it leads the category today. Visual Studio was not the first IDE, but it leads that category today. Perl was not the first completely unreadable language, but it leads that category today. Anyway, the main point remains, there is a huge benefit to being number one in some category, even if you have to invent a whole new category. So his blog post, this blog post is quite short. And he has some humor here, like saying Perl was not first completely unreadable language, but it is kind of notoriously unreadable, so it leads that category today. I think on the most part, I agree with Eric's thoughts in this blog post, and I have some other thoughts as well. So let me share my three thoughts on the law of leadership. So here are my thoughts. This it should be called the law of number one. So a law of leadership, when I read this law of leadership, I thought like it's like the Amazon leadership principle, or some kind of corporate leadership kind of principles, but it's not. It's so it's a little bit kind of misleading to me. Maybe I'm a foreigner. I don't know, but I think if we call it like law of number one or something like that, it might be more obvious, because it's really about like being number one in a category or in the new category you define. The second thought I have is that being number one does have a huge advantage. For example, Google. Google is the number one search engine, and no matter afterwards like how much effort and how many people or money they put into the search engine business, but Microsoft Bing still couldn't catch up with Google's market share, because Google has amassed a lot of users, and they just build on that momentum. So they have all the data, and that user base and data, that's very hard to duplicate. Even though Bing, maybe technically it's kind of on par with Google's search technology, but so Google has evolved more than just a search technology or algorithm. It has evolved to be a brand name. So it's been remembered by a lot of people, and they associate Google with search. So that's why it's hard for Bing to compete. So that just shows like being the number one in that category, like how important that is. And In that regard, I think being number one is quite attractive. But on the other hand, like the author, like Eric Sink mentioned in his blog post, like Microsoft Excel or all the other Microsoft products, they're not number one in the market, but eventually they superseded or they conquered the market because they incrementally improved their products. So that's the other way to success. So that's why I have my third thought here. There is no absolute or surefire way to succeed. Any example has a counterexample. So what I mean here is that any example of success has a counterexample of success. For example, Google being number one and then being successful, but Microsoft has been very successful, even though Microsoft is number two. But Microsoft has this tenacity to always improve and then eventually outsmart or eventually they're able to beat the competition. So but anyhow, I think if you have the opportunity to be number one in the market, then good for you. You should definitely go that direction, like trying to be number one, or just define your own category, and then automatically you will be the number one in your category. But if you cannot, then don't worry too much. The market typically will be large enough for any player to be successful in that market. So even though you are number two, or even you are number N, number 100 or something, you still have a chance to succeed. So it's there's no kind of right or wrong way for success. It's just a matter of just keep trying, and eventually you'll get there. So that's the message I want you to remember. That's it for today. Thanks for watching this video, and to get my latest thoughts on personal career growth or business growth, please subscribe to my newsletter, jchen.blog/business newsletter. And I'll see you in the next video. And actually, I'm thinking maybe doing more videos, so hopefully I can do the daily video instead of weekly. Well, see you.